Welcome to episode 8 of the Saunders Aircraft story. In this episode, we're taking a break from the history of Saunders Aircraft and we'll talk about the ST-27, the ST-27B, and the ST-28. If you have watched episodes 1 and 2, you will know that the ST-27 was a conversion of the de Havilland Heron. In the late 1960s, the PT-6 turboprop engine had been developed, and aircraft manufacturers were designing aircraft that utilized the PT-6. Since commercial passenger service aircraft were regulated to have a minimum of 2 engines, the aircraft manufacturers were designing airframes to have 2 PT-6 engines. Dave Saunders was working at Aircraft Industries of Canada in the early 1960s when Aircraft Industries put a PT-6 engine on the nose of an existing Beech 18 aircraft. I believe this is why Dave Saunders got the idea for his de Havilland Heron conversion, as Dave Saunders in the 1950s worked at de Havilland Aircraft building the de Havilland Heron. There was a cadre of aircraft design engineers that at certain times believed certain aircraft could be improved by changing the engines or by modifying the airframe, or both. Dave Saunders raised $1 million from private sources and set up Saunders Aircraft to do the Heron conversions. Saunders would hire a UK company called ATEL, Aviation Traders Engineering Limited, to do the engineering work for the conversion. The Heron aircraft after conversion would be called the Saunders ST-27. Dave Saunders knew that a total of 97 Huron 2s were built. The Huron 2s were the Hurons with the retractable landing gear. Dave Saunders would have realized that only with 97 Huron 2s worldwide, only a limited number of airframes would be available for conversion, but for now at Saunders Aircraft it was a start, and a follow-up aircraft would be in the future. The ST-27 conversion had around 127 modifications that had to be done on the Heron airframe. Plus the fuselage was cut and a 5'6" extension was put in forward of the wing and a 3-foot extension was put in after the wing. The Heron wing was 75% re-engineered to accommodate the PT-6 turboprop engines. The complete Heron airframe would be overhauled to a zero-time condition. Considering that the Herons were used, and some were very well used, it was an airframe by airframe basis as to how much overhaul work was needed on each airframe. Plus, since the Herons had been built by hand in the UK, each Heron airframe was slightly different, so one could see that the Heron conversion was very labor intensive. Each Heron airframe had to be taken apart, overhauled, modified, and reassembled into an ST-27. In the meantime, a Texan named Jack Raleigh was doing an alternate Heron conversion. This conversion only replaced the 4 original Gypsy Queen de Havilland engines with more modern US-built Lycoming or Continental engines. This conversion was named the Raleigh Turbo Skyliner. What this meant was that air operators were utilizing the Raleigh conversions, and that meant there were less used Hurons on the market available for ST-27 conversions. By the start of 1972, the management of Saunders Aircraft began to realize a few key items on the ST-27. 1. The FAA certification of the ST-27 was going to be nearly impossible. 2. The supply of de Havilland Herons was dwindling to many operators deciding to convert the Herons to the Raleigh Turbo Skyliner configuration using Lycoming and Continental engines. 3. Any service bulletins on the de Havilland Heron could affect the ST-27. 4. The ST-27 was conceived as a conversion airplane. 5. It was costing as much if not more to acquire a Heron, dismantle it, overhaul the airframe, make the modifications, add the 2 new PT-6 turboprop engines, paint the aircraft, and then sell it. It was selling for almost less than what it cost to produce it. In light of all these issues, Saunders management decided it would be more beneficial to build an all-new airframe based on the ST-27. This all-new airframe would be called the ST-27B. Work would start in a few months on the prototype of the ST-27. The prototype would be referred to as the ST-27A. However, by September 1972, the build of the ST-27A was delayed, most likely due to the FAA FAR 25 certification process. The process worked like this. Saunders Aircraft informs DOT Canada they are applying for FAA FAR 25 certification. DOT informs the FAA. The FAA tells DOT what the certification criteria is at that time. DOT informs Saunders Aircraft of the FAA criteria. Saunders Aircraft starts the certification process, submitting timely progress reports to DOT. DOT reviews and approves the progress reports, and then DOT sends the progress information to the FAA. And then also throw in any British ARB involvement. You end up with a complicated process indeed. Slow and complicated. The FAA FAR 25 certification process needed to substantiate the proposed all-new ST-27B airframe and related components, as well as the flight characteristics of the new ST-27B. In April of 1973, Saunders Aircraft received DOT approval to use a digital computer program to analyze airframe loads for the all-new ST-27B. Then in December of 1973, Saunders Aircraft asked for and received DOT approval to convert ST-27005 to the ST-27A configuration and use 005 as a flight test vehicle. Saunders Aircraft ST-27005 began as de Havilland Heron 14087, built in 1955 and delivered to the South African Air Force. Then sold as surplus in 1964 to the English Electric Company and was converted for an executive transport aircraft. Saunders Aircraft bought Heron 14087 in April 1971 for conversion to an ST-27. By mid-1974, the Saunders ST-27 that was being converted to the ST-27A, the prototype for the ST-27B, was referred to as the ST-27B. It would appear that Saunders was dropping the ST-27A designation for the prototype and using the ST-27B designation instead. Even in the September 23, 1974 issue of Flight International magazine, the rollout of the ST-27 was referred to as the ST-27B. The Saunders Company newsletter of September 1974 referred to aircraft 005 as to the prototype B or the ST-27B. So going forward, it appears that the prototype was being called the ST-27B. In January 1975, Saunders Aircraft decided to rename their all-new ST-27 as now the ST-28 to distinguish the all-new aircraft from the previous Heron conversion variant. The Saunders Aircraft marketing brochure for the all-new ST-27B was changed to the ST-28. The ST-27B soldiered on in its flight test row carrying the registration C-FYBM-X. The final paint scheme for the ST-27B was in the U.S. commuter airline colors of Swift Air as a marketing incentive to Swift Air. The all-new ST-28-001 first flew on December 12, 1975 and carried the registration C-GYAP-X and was painted in the traditional Saunders Aircraft colors, white with a teal striping. The ST-28 sat in storage for many years at the Gimli Airport in the possession of the Western Canada Aviation Museum of Winnipeg, until it was scrapped by the museum in and around 2014. This brings us to the end of episode 8 of the Saunders Aircraft story, and I hope this episode clears up the ST-27, the 27A, 27B, and the ST-28 aircraft designations. We'll go back into the further history of Saunders Aircraft in episode 9, titled Saunders Aircraft under Reg Kersey. Episode 9 should be out on June 1st, 2026. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.